Hello again, it's me, Nanigans, coming to you with a tier list video. Today we're going over how viable certain types would be in a draft format, and I have my Indigo mods, Bebsy and Kraber with me. That's the part where you say hi.
Yeah, so...
No, it ain't.
Alright, so we're just gonna start by alphabetical order. So starting with bug type. What are you guys' thoughts on bug type?
Well, not bad, but
there are better things to go for. As I was saying earlier, usually the good bug types are ones that have really good secondary typings, such as steel or like I guess fairy is a good one. Volcarona bug fire is nice. It kind of lacks as a type when accompanied by other like type. I don't know. It doesn't really bring a lot to the table outside of some sticky web users, and then there's also you kind of have to build around them a lot too, and that kind of just makes your team weaker overall.
Yeah, it's not very splashable. You have to have like a very specific need for it, and it's not ever like, oh, I gotta draft a bug type round one because this is I need it.
It's very dependent on move pool, and I think really the only ones worth taking are really offensive ones.
Yeah.
That can either flex as defensive picks or fit other roles.
Like I just feel like so many bug types are either like just for a lead, like for sticky webs, and for U-turn or some type of momentum.
Yeah. Stop U-turn is awesome, but like when you gotta draft a bug type to get it, it's kind of meh.
Yeah, you might as well just get like literally any Pokemon that learns U-turn or Volt Switcher for that matter. So I think we can all agree on that bug type is one of the bottom 3 types for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So how are y'all feeling about dark type?
Dark type is inherently interesting because it's like the psychic immunity is good, has interesting resistances, but I feel like it's definitely a middle of the road type.
Really?
Because for me, it's like the weaknesses. Fairy is a really good type, and fighting is fairly decent. And if you're going to be shit against Fairy, you want to have more utility than Dark IMO. Like how fighting.
Okay, so you're like not really a dark type believer then.
I am a dark type supporter, not a believer.
Okay.
I think dark types are very good. I think every team should have a dark type, depending on what else they have. If you have a fighting type, you probably want a dark type alongside it to help with psychic types. I think that dark fits well in specific cores. Really good attacking moves, like knockoff sucker punch.
Foul play.
Obviously, foul play is like good on defensive Pokemon.
My biggest thing is like the immunity to Prankster is so good.
Yeah, that is very nice. And you know what else is really nice is being able to resist Ghost, which is probably one of the best attacking.
Yeah, to be able to strongly counter that too. Yeah.
I think that's really important for a team, and I wouldn't say it's like S tier. But
I would say it's like front of A tier, bottom of S tier.
Yeah,
I think Dark type is so good. I'm a big Dark type believer.
But yeah, obviously, if you can wait on a Dark type, there's some good Dark type utility in lower tiers generally that still exist and can be splashed on the team.
I think that's the thing that holds Dark type back for me. At IMO is that I'm never thinking of drafting a Dark type round 1. I'm thinking of lower tier Dark types.
Okay, that's fair. Alright, I think Dragon type?
Dragon is a type that's like good, but it's mainly built off the users, because like you're not thinking about Altaria when you're thinking of getting a Dragon type.
I think this is the most top-heavy type.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, actually.
You've got like 6 really good Dragon types or whatever, and then everything else is just Drampa, or
right, and
not good.
Well, the other thing is that Dragon is like an attacking stab isn't like super scary unless of course it's versus another dragon, right? So I just a lot of times the dragons in play are usually going for just coverage instead of actually taking their own dragon moves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that like you're saying, it's very dependent on the user. So you have Pokemon like Hydreigon, Latios, all very good dragons with very good move pools, but they don't need like Draco Meteor or anything like that to be a good Pokemon. And I think that's really kind of more on that's more of those individual Pokemon than the dragon type itself.
I feel like Dragon is a type that's trying to be Ghost type, where it's like super strong, neutral coverage against everything, but with how crippling it is to not hit fairies and steals, it reduces the typing by a bit.
Yeah, it's like definitely a much more defensive type, and I feel like not enough dragon types actually like learn momentum moves for it to truly be an effective pivot or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Every time I draft, I don't think I drafted Haxorus, right? And every time I use Haxorus, I just felt like it was never enough. And this was in a league where we only had one fairy type, and it still wasn't like, it just felt like it wasn't doing enough.
Yeah, I don't know. If you're drafting a dragon type, you're turn 1 drafting Garchomp or something. It's not like you're really thinking about Appleton round 6.
Yeah. Alright, so are we on B tier, C tier? Where are we feeling?
I'd put that in B tier just because C tier to me is kind of just like the worst ones, and I wouldn't put Dragon as like the worst one. It's definitely like middle of the road, just nothing special, but generally it's a good type to have. Like, it doesn't hurt you. You really only want a Dragon type if it's a good one, so that's why I kind of put it lower on this tier list, but I would still put it in B tier.
How do y'all feel about electric types? Because I'm gonna start off by saying electric type is probably my favorite type, and I think you should always have an electric type, whether it be fast, whether it be slow, as long as it can learn Volt Switch and also U-turn if it's able. I think electric is so good.
Is sick if your team allows it to be sick, because you don't need to have a Regieleki problem where you can't. If your team can deal with ground types, then having an electric type is awesome.
Yeah, and if your opponent that week doesn't have a ground type, your electric just will always go so hard on a team.
Yeah, you get to mash Volt Switch like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, all those qualities are really good. I think that generally the electric types that aren't at the top of the tier list in most draft leagues are kind of like underwhelming. And generally I find it more of a hindrance to be stuck with something like Raichu as my main electric type. Well, yeah, it can put in work and it can hit things super effectively. Generally, the electric type I do want is either way more expensive than that, not available, or just doesn't fit like any sort of like team comps I would be building.
Yeah, that's fair.
As an attacking type, obviously it's really like up there, but a lot of things do get Thunderbolt and etc. as coverage. Mm-hmm. So it's it's better as an attacking type rather than. I think electric, it's more important to have an electric type than it would be to have an ice type, for example.
For sure.
But, I would also put that in, like, B tier.
In B tier?
I think
electric,
I think I agree with B tier, because it's like, unless you have an electric type that's really going to abuse its typing, mono electric is rough as a defensive typing. And if you're stuck with Manectric or something, it's gonna get rough.
All right, I hear you. I hear what you guys are saying, but I just want to say, like, Electros is insane.
Well, think about why Electros is insane. It's also the same reason why all the Rotom forms are insane, as well as Zapdos, is that they don't have a ground weakness.
Yeah.
So that makes him a lot easier to fit on a team, makes him easier to pivot around and stuff because that threat isn't always there.
Yeah. Alright, so fairy type. Alright, so fighting type. Alright. How do we feel about fairies?
Fairy is kind of like an easy top 5 for me. I
think no matter what, we can't really debate that it's top 5.
Fairy is busy being cracked at the top of the team.
I think we should just put Fairy in S tier for right now and kind of go back to it when we have more S tiers.
Yeah, I mean that's fair.
All right. So fighting types?
The irony is that the reason fighting types aren't as good is because of this type that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Fighting types are very good. They deal with normal types, and a lot of normal types can be very bulky and annoying wish passers, or just generally like threats that have unresisted stab throughout a team.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like priority Mach Punch, and I guess you could consider Vacuum Wave the same. And some fighting types get extreme speed. Generally, they're good for that. They're also good versus dark types, but I don't think you need a fighting type on any one team to like succeed. I don't know if they're actually necessary.
I agree with you. I actually think a lot of like fighting type on like dragon types and electric types have a ton of really good low tier options. On top of having really good high tier options. Like in almost every draft league we've done, there's usually like 5 really good high tiers, and then there's a ton of mid tiers, and then a ton of low tiers, and all of them aren't bad. They can definitely, like make good use of their slot on your team.
I totally agree there. I just think that if you don't have a decent speed stat to work with, the fighting type is just not worth it at all. They will just get outsped and just hit with everything, because fighting type doesn't really resist a lot either.
Yeah.
It resists dark, and it resists rock, which I guess resisting rock is really cool for Pokemon like Hitmontop
and bug type, which are all like not
and bug type. Yeah, no, resisting
types.
U-turn is also nice. It's good for Hitmontop. He's got Intimidate, makes the typing a little more valuable.
Yeah.
But generally, it's outclassed by other types.
So I personally think fighting is way better than dragon type, but what do y'all think?
It's kind of iffy.
I would put it in B tier, but above dragon.
River?
Yeah, I feel like dragon as a type, even though I think dragon defensively is way better than fighting, but I feel like there's more fighting types I'd be willing to pick out of the high tiers than dragon types.
Yeah. I think fighting it also does times 2 versus steel, right? So
yeah.
I don't know. I think that's spoiler pretty useful. Fire is a weird type for me. For me, fire is kind of all over the place. It's one of those types that I think you can draft 2 of and do really well with, but at the same time, you have to have 2 completely different fire types for that to work, like
fire is a strange type. It has so many resistances for no reason.
Yeah, it's like actually bonkers defensively.
Yeah, but it has a bunch of weaknesses that are really crippling, like rock and ground and water.
Yeah, very, very much so. Like, Stealth Rock's weakness will always be awful for fire types.
Yeah, Stealth Rock weakness loses just straight up to bulky waters. Like, it's a weird trade-off type where you get the strange but effective defensive utility, but your offenses aren't that scary unless you're staring a steel type down in the face.
Yeah. Which they'll usually... Most people will always have a fire resist on their team. But resisting fairy type is huge, IMO. I think that's so good.
Yeah. I think that it's becoming a lot better with the addition of heavy duty boots, and I think it's going to be dependent on that item.
Yeah,
That's kind of why I think maybe on my original tier list, I probably put it a little too low, but I would still kind of generally keep it in B tier. I think B tier is probably the most like populated one,
Yeah.
just because a lot of types do kind of just feel like mid. Like it's not bad to have them. It's not
Mhm.
bad to not have them. I think in these with item restrictions, fire types might be harder to fit on teams just because you might already have a boots user. In teams in leagues with unlimited, I think it's much better just because you can slap boots on all your fire types.
Yeah. So
Generally, I think it's very dependent on builds and
Yeah.
the Pokemon. Once
Really
again,
depends on
kind
the
of
team,
like
for
fighting
sure.
type.
yeah.
That electric
I
placement.
personally still think fire is better than dragon, mainly because I'm just not a believer of dragon types.
Non-dragon believer.
That
Yeah.
electric placement has me wanting to say words.
Oh, hello, September.
Ooh.
Say hi to YouTube.
Oh, is this YouTube?
Yeah, we're recording.
Yes.
Oh, well, I'm sorry for crashing the party.
It's okay.
Regardless. Electric type has me saying words.
Say the
Why
words.
is this in B tier?
Really quick synopsis.
Electric type has, off the top of my head, three resistances, counting the immunity. Right?
What is it immune to?
Thunder
No,
Wave.
other way around. It dragon
Oh.
resists electric, ground
Grass.
is immune, grass is resistant.
True.
Grass is generally not a relevant defensive typing. Not to say that it's not a relevant type, but it's not something that people generally pick up to wall with. And then dragon and ground is just kind of rough. On the other hand, electric type moves are some of the most splashable and just some of the best moves that you can pick up. Bolt Beam is a coverage staple for a reason. Volt Switch is one of the few easily accessible switching moves.
So the reason why we put it low is specifically for drafting Pokemon types. When we were looking at it, we just kind of looked at a board and said there aren't that many like really good high tier electrics. And once the high tier electrics are gone, a lot of the lower tier electrics aren't too great.
I mean, high tier electrics that are amazing. Xurkitree, Tapu Koko, Raikou, Zapdos.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head. Regieleki is amazing if you can get a second electric type to work with it, so that you can just kind of
But
overpower your way
that's kind of
through.
one of our problems with it is having to draft 2 electric types isn't always the greatest choice.
Especially defensively. You
Yeah,
are just
especially defensively, and especially if they,
they
have
resist.
like double grounds or something.
you are begging to be walled by Hippowdon if
Yeah.
you draft
I mean, if you pick up multiple electric types, yeah, you get walled by Hippowdon. But on the other hand, eventually that Hippowdon's gonna die, and it's gonna take down one of the electric types with it probably. But then you have a second, and nothing else on that entire team likely resists electric.
Okay.
Spamming a specific type is reasonable.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
of that.
Just
I just think electric type is incredible because the only weakness is ground. And,
and I do agree with you on that. I think electric type is really good. I personally would put electric on bottom of A, but we're kind of like top of B, bottom of A, where it is right now.
I don't think it's bad or anything. I think it's just like the way it's panning out.
Okay,
Things
but-
above it are better for more reasons.
why is you're recording? I need to not be asking too many questions. I just
All right,
can't see that.
we're gonna move on from this one. We'll get back
Okay.
to it. All right.
Yes, I'm
So
sorry.
we were going on fire. We were just about to place it. Do we think fire like in front of dragon, in front of fighting, or behind the two?
I could
I'd
see
put
like,
it above those two.
I say behind the two, just because our format is one item each, and stealth rock weakness is crippling.
Yeah, I was mentioning that earlier with the boots. Like if you can only have one pair of boots, it's
Mhm.
above them. I mean, it's below them. If you can have multiple, then it's above them.
That's a fine
So-
take by me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think even with just one heavy duty boots, it's still a really good type though. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll agree with y'all.
yeah, just especially if you get a good defensive user.
Yeah.
Let's meet halfway. Let's just put it.
Yeah.
And
All right.
by the end of the video, dragon will be at
So
the bottom.
flying
type.
type, obviously, you should
It's
always have a
minimum
flying
minimum
type.
A tier. Minimum
Yeah,
A tier.
why?
You should always have a
Borderline
flying type,
S.
whether you want it or don't want it. Unfortunately,
Obviously, you could
immunity?
substitute. Yeah, I mean, obviously you could substitute the ground immunity with something like a levitator, like Bronzong comes to mind. But then you're kind of vulnerable to like mold breakers, stuff like that. Specifically, Excadrill is someone that comes to mind that can abuse that. That's why flying type in general is like all the good Pokemon. Like there's a lot of like super high tier Smogon OU picks, and they're all top there. They're all at the top because they have flying type attached to them. Corviknight, you know, Landorus.
I think
they're-
it, like,
the fighting type
monoflying-
resistance, being weak to both like electric and ice is kind of crappy,
dookie.
but you know, it's also dependent on like your secondary typing.
I think flying is a really good secondary typing, but I think as a monotype, it's not so great. In my personal opinion, if a flying type can learn Defog and can learn U-turn, it's probably a really good Pokemon, or
Yeah,
at least serviceable enough to be a good low tier. I would rather have a low tier flying than just about any of these low tiers.
I think while flying does compete for your heavy duty boot spot, right? It's just the sheer utility because of Gen 7's massive increase of defog and because so many flying types get roost. It's like, even if you have a shitty defensive flying type, it's still going to provide.
Usually it works.
Usually, it's gonna do
Yeah.
what you need it to do, you know,
Yeah.
which is come in, defog, roost, U-turn out. Maybe hit a Brave Bird, maybe hit a Hurricane.
I mean, I'm just
Where
looking at this
would
and
you
I'm
put it?
thinking,
Where would you put it?
I would put it behind Dark, definitely. And obviously I would swap it with Electric because I'm biased as hell.
Basis.
Yeah, EQ immunity is important, especially considering that most of your cores in a draft format are going to probably be either Steel, Rock, or probably Fire type. Your cores are going to generally be around one of the big obvious tanks, one of the big heavy hitters, and just a good support mon. And Earthquake is important to watch out for and get around in that case.
Yeah.
The only thing is that I think that Defog isn't really just a flying type thing anymore.
That's true.
Obviously, flyings do get a lot of flying types do get Defog, but I think it's not enough of an increase to make it relevant to the argument.
Okay. I will agree. I do think I would always rather have a dark type than a flying type. But the times that I have not drafted a flying type have been some of the worst times I've had.
Do you mean flying type or something immune to Earthquake?
I guess something immune to Earthquake, but I had a bug type. Illumise.
That
Alright.
doesn't count as a Pokemon, you know
Illumise.
it.
Yeah, I know. Alright.
Literally the worst of the two.
Doesn't even get
Let's
tail
not
glow.
talk
I think.
about Illumise, let's talk about flying type. So I'm down to put dark type above flying, but to me it just feels wrong.
I have no preference, to be honest. I think they're both equally as good.
Craver?
I definitely lean towards flying, but you've already heard my dark slander, so
This is true. I think dark type is better than flying.
I think it's fine as is. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
or we
that's
can
cool.
even just say it's just tied. Ghost type. Best attacking
tier.
type in the game. Immune to normal.
this
Has
is an S tier,
priority
easy.
moves. Has Shadow Ball, one of those best special attacks in the game. Poltergeist,
Pain
one of
Split.
the best physically. Pain Split. Will-O-Wisp, Hex. Like, this type is nuts. It's really insane. There are really good high tier ghost types and really good low tier ghost types.
Big
Ghost
thing
types-
about ghost types too, that usually, since ghost is such like a good attacking type, that you can really make use of any secondary typing that you have.
Yeah, that's what I was
Because-
just about to say next.
Yeah.
is
Just
that,
because
like,
some
every
niche
ghost type has a
threat
good
that's-
secondary.
It's so good.
Like
Yeah,
even
it's so good.
even at a glance, Blacephalon, Gengar, Sableye, Aegislash, Chandelure, all of these are stupid good in terms of just coming in on a normal type attack
And
or
think of
coming
all
in-
those. Think of the stats of all those Pokemon too. You
Yeah,
got
they're all
Chandelure
good.
is the worst
70.
there. Chandelure is the worst one there, and it's got
Sableye.
145 base attack. Oh yeah, I guess Sableye. But
Sableye.
think of
Well,
Sableye's
has
got
priority
prankster
with
utility.
prankster moves.
Yeah.
I
Sableye is-
personally think Ghost is better than Fairy type, just because I think attacking is better in draft than defensive options are.
No.
But I also think Moonblast is the second best attack in the game. So
Well,
The
second
what?
general attack.
Like
what?
I don't know. I see it as like normal types are okay, and generally it's generally something that you want like a really good normal type instead of like a mediocre one.
Yeah,
And you
for
can make
sure.
a mediocre one work for sure, but and then if there's no good dark types, if your best dark type switching is like Persian, and your normal type is like Diggersby, like
Figures be the
that's your front line against ghosts, and that's not like a good front line
yeah.
because
for immunity.
generally the ghosts are fast and they're strong, and it's
You're gonna
it's
eat a
tough to
plus
switch
one
into.
Shadow Ball, probably.
honestly the reason dark is so high on this tier list is probably because of ghost.
Yeah.
fair enough.
plus, the knockoff button.
No.
Yeah, and then-
yeah.
Yeah,
Grass type. I think grass
C
type
tier.
is C.
I don't I guess in terms of like if D is absolute worst, then I'd say that
Yeah,
Yeah,
D
it
is
could probably
absolute
go in-
worst. D is like the most unnecessary.
I
C
honestly- I
being less than middle tier.
grass is mid for me. I think it's a good attacking type actually, like
Nah.
unironically.
I think
problem
it's a
is
good attacking type too, but I'm
Dragon
also
Fire.
a Gorgeist believer, so.
Sorry.
How many times do we gotta let Tim draft Gorgeist before he learns?
The thing is, for me, with grass type, dragon, fire, flying, steel, poison.
Yeah, it just
Are
gets
all
walled by
resists.
so many things.
It's super effective against water, which I think is. Spoiler alert, I think that's probably the best type. It's super effective against water, ground, rock. And that's it.
It's
Yeah,
super effective to really good types. Like it's a really good like niche kind of counter Pikmon or counter pick
It's-
type.
Yeah.
It's just like worst water type in my opinion.
It's better bug type, worse water type.
Yeah, it's just like resisting rock is nice for stealth rock stuff, but
It doesn't resist rock actually.
it doesn't.
Nope.
Wow.
Yeah, only resist ground.
Venusaur taught me wrong.
If it resisted rock, it'd probably be a lot higher on this tier list.
Regardless, every single really good grass type off the top of my head, especially in draft formats. Well, not every single. Rillaboom's right there, I guess. But Amoonguss, Venusaur,
You're saying they're like
Ferrothorn.
weak to psychic and like other moves that.
No, no, I'm saying that they rely so heavily on their secondary type, it's not even
Right.
funny.
That's a good point. And and the grass is only good in that context
Yeah.
because it works in tandem.
Yeah,
Cough, cough. Why I don't like flying. Cough, cough.
type besides Rillaboom's insane coverage.
Well, I mean, there's still like
Superior.
good mono grass types. You can think about like Tangrowth is really good.
Serena.
Superior.
Yeah, Serena is decent mid-tier pick. Gets like rapid spin and
Are
stuff.
they good because they're
Anti-priority.
grass type though, or are they good because they're good mons?
It's probably because their utility, move
Like,
pool, and
Serena
abilities.
is-
When I look at
The-
grass type, I see nothing but utility and like power whip and I don't know, leaf storm.
Aromatherapy.
Aromatherapy is good. Yep. I think powder moves and spore, and I think what counters powder moves and spore? Oh, grass types. So I'm drafting a grass type to counter a grass type when really I
Yeah,
could
I
be
don't-
running safety goggles and a fire type and then actually be winning.
Yeah, but that's kind of niche, you know
That
what I
is
mean?
very
So like,
niche, very
I
specific.
don't ever hate having a grass type,
I
and
don't-
generally they fill out like a lot of like cores revolve around like fire, water, and grass, and I
yeah,
think
it's
that
definitely a
in that
really
context,
good beginner.
it's really important
Yeah.
to have,
I feel
but
like
you don't need it.
I feel like grass is, out of all the ones that we've mentioned so far, grass is the one that matters contextually the most.
Yes, yeah, okay, I agree with that.
Like, definitely Ferrothorn and Amoonguss are two of the best walls in draft formats, but those two Pokemon being A tier doesn't mean that grass,
Grass
the
is suddenly good,
type.
right? Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good point. I'm
Okay.
fine with its placement, I guess. I think it's really dependent on how the rest of the tier list
Yeah,
shuffles
we'll make
out.
slight adjustments when we get to the end.
What's the
Speaking
next
of the
type?
end, this is the end of the video.